Stephanie, I thought you recorded these meetings for quality control on me every time.
Well, there's that.
No. Is this, do you want us to get going, Stephanie? Is this our crew?
Well, here's Joe and Gwinnett. Well, it's 7:01, so I want to be
Yeah.
respectful of people's time. So sure.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. It's good to see you. My computer just did something really weird and you're not actually all on my screen, but I'll trust that you can still hear me and my computer will figure itself out. Thank you. If you hear no other words tonight, although obviously I hope you hear more than just these two words, but thank you for being host to some of our new members. Whether you're newer or a longtime member, once you're on the inside of any organization, you kind of start to lose sight of some of the jargon and some of the locations and some of the things that insiders to an organization take for granted. But the truth is, when you are new to an institution, there are a lot of things about the institution that are not as transparent as the insiders think. And that's kind of one of your roles with our new members. As Stephanie helpfully notes in the new member host job description, your job is not to be their best friend, although that may be an outcome, which would be fantastic, but it's not an expectation per se. Your job is definitely not to be a stalker. I often say that being a new member host family is walking this fine line between being a shepherd and not being a stalker. And then, although last time one of our new member host families said, Peter, maybe the best thing is to simply to say that you're going to be a friend. And that maybe one of the best things that a new member host family can do is say, who do I wish or what do I wish I was receiving when I joined Davidson College Presbyterian Church? And that's certainly a good place to start. There's not, when we talk about the role that you're going to play in kind of being an interpreter and being a guide, a host, a shepherd, we use a lot of metaphors. The pressure is not all on you. I mean, the real work here is the work of the Holy Spirit, and you're in partnership with that Spirit and with our new members. But it is true that the host families can play a role that's incredibly helpful to our new members. And so Stephanie is going to walk us through the job description. But before she does, I want to say two things about joining a church. One of which is that we know, at least back in the day, and so this is pre-COVID, but back in the day, for every 5 to 6 weeks that someone didn't do something outside of worship, you cut in half the likelihood they would stay a member of the church. And one of the best ways for people to feel connected to something outside of worship is for people to get a personal invitation. We all think a bulletin announcement is the way that someone's going to go, I'm going to join something outside of worship. That's really not the way it primarily happens in the life of any organization. Someone says to someone else, I'm part of a Tuesday men's group called the Brindisi Group. I think you might really enjoy that group. Would you be willing to would you like to come some Tuesday? I'd be happy to introduce you to the guys. I picked Brindisi because Bob Osborne's on the call and that's his group. So number one, helping people find ways to get connected outside of worship and doing that through personal invitation is a pretty important piece. And the other thing I was going to mention is that part of the reason we have host families is one of the old adages about larger churches is that big churches have big back doors. We come in, there's a new member class, people say, we are so glad to have you, Peter Henry. But when Peter Henry stops coming to worship and then maybe hasn't found a place to be involved, but nobody's noticed that Peter hasn't shown up for a while and Peter never gets a call, it becomes a self-reinforcing mechanism. I guess I really wasn't part of that church. Nobody's even noticed that I'm gone. And so that's part of the role that you can play in this 6-month job that you've signed on for, which is to be someone who notices when people are there, maybe notices if they haven't been there a little bit, not as their minder, but as someone who's welcoming and encouraging. So Stephanie's going to walk you through the job description, and I have 1 or 2 things to say at the end. But again, to wrap up my concluding remarks, thank you for being willing to be a new member host family. It's a really important role. Again, it's not all on you. There's a Holy Spirit and their new members, but thank you for taking on a role that can be an important part of it.
Definitely. So I assume that you've all seen this by now. I think I've seen it a couple of times, but the most important thing is for those of you who can to be there on Sunday. Their class is actually 2 to 4 in the congregation house, but the first hour of it from 2 to 3, we spend in a circle, literally going around the circle, and every person tells kind of the story of how they came to DCPC. And what that does for the new members is just show them that not everybody was a cradle Presbyterian, and that there's a lot of different backgrounds that are coming together and finding common ground here at our church, which I love. But you also get to hear about their families and just make some connections with people's hometowns and things like that. So I'm actually going to send you a script between now and Sunday of kind of what we're hoping for with these introductions, because there's a lot of people. There's 20 new members, and then there'll be 20 of you guys, plus some staff members and members of the committee. So the committee members, we actually wrote biographies, and we're going to send those to the new members so that the committee members don't have to speak, but there's still a lot of people to talk. But it's a really fun hour, and at the end of it, we'll give you some time to make a connection just personally with your new member. And it just means a lot to them, I think, to have you there. The second thing that's already planned is that we're going to invite everybody to Wednesday dinner on March 15th. And that's just our normal Wednesday dinner that happens at 5:45 every Wednesday. But we're going to invite you guys and the new members to come and sit together and just be a part of that meal and just have another chance to connect, basically. And then after that, it's kind of up to you, depending on what kind of connection you've made with them. But it would always be great for you to ask them occasionally if they have gotten involved in ways that they had hoped that they would. And if they haven't, to try to figure out how to get them connected to a Sunday school class or a women's circle or a fellowship event. And if you do happen to go to the same worship service, just planning to come and sit with them sometimes is a nice thing to do. And this is basically a 6-month commitment. That's sort of a loose timeline. So after 6 months, take the pressure off yourself that you have to keep, as Peter says, stalking them. But if you become friends with them, which we hope you will, your relationship will last far past 6 months. And at the end of that document, there are just some questions. Most of those will actually be answered in the new member class, but if you're ever in a situation with them that you're trying to get a conversation started, those are just some starters there. So any questions about that format?
Well, folks, think about questions, Stephanie. One of the things I did want to mention to everybody is that, you're obviously going to face some of this on the new member that you're a partner with. We will certainly find that some new members, like, I've been here a year, like I'm already in, like, I'm not looking for a lot from you, Peter Henry, and they wouldn't say it like that. But some folks are already ensconced in the life of the church, but others are brand new. They checked us out online. They finally moved to the area, but they really don't know anybody yet, and they don't know all of our insider language. Stephanie used a great example of the kind of thing that that we would want to be interpreters for. Everybody who's a part of DCPC, or I should say, a lot of the people who are part of DCPC know exactly what they mean when they say a PW circle. What is a PW circle? How is that different from a PW square? Or what is a Bible study? When, at my old church, a Bible study like this were for the scholars. Do you have to show up having studied the Bible for years? And I think it's, again, we cannot overestimate the way in which our language is really opaque to people who are new to the life of a congregation. And so when we can interpret, when we can invite and help people know what they're being invited to, it's all to the good for our new members.
I'm glad you picked up on that, Peter. I threw it right to you.
Yeah, no, I wasn't chastising you for that, but that's just a great example. I mean, and
No, it's perfect.
First time we moved to Grosse Pointe Memorial Church, where I served in Michigan, one of the women of the church asked Sean, said, you would really like our circle. And Sean's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. right? And so needed to have it explained.
That's awesome. So any questions have popped up? No, these are all pros, Peter.
Well, before, like, I'm not gonna let folks get away with no questions and then hopping right off, although I know that Zoom is, as we've gotten beyond the worst of the pandemic, it's nice not to be on Zoom for too long. But Lynn and Jeannie and Bill and Deidre, you're newer members to the church, generally speaking, compared to some of the folks on the call. When you all became members of the church, what helped you begin to find your way in, or what do you wish maybe might have happened in terms of your partnership with your host family?
Well, I could just jump right into that. We were fortunate when the very first time we came to the church, people spoke to us. At that point, we were going to I think we were going in the Lingle Chapel at 9:45. Everybody was just so friendly and nice. And then the first time we went into the sanctuary at 11 o'clock service. Sarah Henry was a greeter.
Yeah.
And you could not have asked for a better person to just fall into the arms of. She got me connected with Stephanie, and I started getting the newsletters. And that's one of the first things I suggest to people, is that they need to get the newsletter. There's so much happening in this church. In some ways, it's a little bit overwhelming when you're new. Maybe part of it, we were new Presbyterians, so part of the language is part of it. Like you said, that's very true. And it's just, this church is so special that it has so much. And Sarah got me connected with Shalom, and in a circle. I mean, she just really reached out. And I think that we have to realize that we're always, we just need to speak to people and be friendly. And that's what DCPC was to us. We just felt like everyone was so friendly and so welcoming, so inviting. I can't say enough about it.
I would agree with that it's amazing through the years we've moved and we've gone to different churches, and many churches, and even some in this area, you can go in, sit up in the middle of the church even, and get out and not say anything to anybody unless you initiate it. But I think almost every service in the beginning, somebody recognized that we were new and said something, even if they weren't a greeter. And then I happened to play tennis with Tom Clayton and Larry Kane. So it's kind of nice seeing them at times at the church too. And they encouraged me to join.
And I didn't know anyone at the church. Lynn did know those two, but I didn't know anyone.
Every church I know will tell you they're friendly, but you don't ask the church if they're friendly. You ask their visitors if they're a friendly church. And it's true. There are congregations where people will come and go and nobody says a word. And I'll pick out another relatively new member, Don Harima. Don will tell you that part of what brought him back to DCPC was he came one Sunday and he met Wynn Mabry in the narthex. And they had a small conversation. Wynn remembered that Don was interested in Davidson basketball. And the next Sunday when Don and Cheryl came back, Wynn Mabry said, "It's welcome back, Don and Cheryl. It's good to have you with us again. Hey, Don, do you see the last Davidson basketball game?" And, for Don, the fact that Wynn remembered him remembered something he was interested in. Again, every church will tell you they're friendly, but ask the visitors.
And a new person that's visiting, I remember the first person that spoke to us, and that was Sally Carr. It was the first time we were there, right after the service. I mean, you remember. So it's important.
Bill and Deidre, anything you would throw out as folks who are a little bit newer and might remember becoming part of DCPC?
Yes, I remember. I am a victim of Marjorie Burris. And we were actually walking from the Congregational House over to the sanctuary, and she was greeting outside. And she stopped and talked with us, and she knew my name at that point. And she remembered me every time she saw me after that, and she constantly invited me to do things. So I say a victim of Marjorie because you know that half the church
Yeah.
was greeted by Marjorie.
That's right.
True.
And you cannot say no to Marjorie.
Yeah.
She
That is
such
so
a
true.
sweet lady.
Yeah.
I think the other thing we had the benefit of, we live in Bailey's Glen, and there's a
Yeah.
DCPC at the Glen. And we have, several of our friends, even before we joined DCPC, were members, and we kind of had the extra benefit of having good friends that attended DCPC, even though we were very new to the community. Helped us along.
Yeah. And the good news about being new member host families is, you all aren't responsible for knowing the name of every visitor who comes into the church. You have one or now two names that you're responsible for, but knowing those names and recognizing those faces is integral. We're all of enough of an age that I can tell you that, frankly, it's a little bit like the Cheers theme song, where everybody knows your name. We all want to be known by our names when we walk into our building. And again, not everybody will know your new member right away. You don't know the name of every member, but as long as you know their names and connect it with their faces, that's a pretty good first step for folks to feel included and welcome.
Well, Peter, I will say, when we started visiting the church, there was the interim pastor, and we waited to see who this new person was going to be. And so we were so happy and that you were the new chosen person. And we have been amazed at how you have learned names. You're very good at that.
I won't tell you all my secrets. How about that?
You
Thank you for
should.
that. No.
It'd be
You should,
fascinating.
especially if they're funny, that would help us then remember people's
No, they're not so funny. So there are two things about names. Number one, people think I'm really good. And so when I don't remember a name, I feel like particularly bad. But then number two, sometimes I don't. And so I'll grab Bill and I'll say, Bill, will you please go over and introduce yourself to that person and come back and tell me their name? No. But anyway, thank you for that. I am a little bit better than average, which I'm grateful, but I have some other things that help me. Any other questions or observations? We're not going to keep you on the line forever tonight. I know Stephanie promised you a shorter meeting. It's mostly roughly an orientation and an opportunity to say thank you, but other questions or observations?
Cool. Jeannie, thank you for what you said about the newsletter. That is one thing you guys can ask your new members is, do they get the newsletter? Because they're supposed to, but if they're not getting it, that's a problem, and I can fix that. And also just ask them, I'm encouraging them to get on Realm so that they can start using the directory and seeing the news feed and seeing all the events and things like that. So if you can just help encourage them, that would be awesome.
Another thing that's real good is the website. Just encourage them to go to the website. I've learned a lot from the website myself.
That's good to hear.
I got a quick question. We're not going to be able to be there on Sunday. We're out of town. So would you recommend that we try to contact these people prior, or like, obviously that probably isn't going to happen, but I'm just wondering. I know when we were first coming, we didn't have our host family either, and it didn't feel good, So I don't want to do the same thing to them that happened to us.
I would say wait until Saturday evening and reach out, and then I will reiterate that with them on Sunday that we knew you couldn't be there, but that you guys probably have reached out, and we'll definitely try to get together, hopefully before March 15th. But if not, if that's the first time you see each other.
We're leaving Saturday morning to go out of town, so
Oh, gotcha. Well, give me tomorrow morning. I'm loading them up with lots of information, and the host family piece has not gotten to them yet, so they don't really know that you exist, but they will after tomorrow morning. So tomorrow evening you can reach out to them, and I'll have to send you their contact information because I don't open them up to the church directory until after the class is finished. So they won't actually be in Realm until Sunday evening, but I'll send you yours.
Good.
Yay. Anybody else?
Do you ever leverage on the larger group, like for something like that? So, if somebody's not going to be in an event, because as I looked at the list, I mean, we've never met the folks that we're sponsoring, but I've known Polly Griffin for 30 something years, so if there was ever something where Joe and Gwinnett couldn't do something, I mean, I already know Polly, but then again, Polly knows like a lot of folks in the church already. So, I mean, like you said, there are folks with different levels of, knowledge. So,
Right. Well, hopefully we'll have enough membership committee members there that we will sort of adopt your family. The Dramalas will adopt your family on Sunday, so they're not going to feel like they don't have somebody. For sure. That's part of what our committee is for. Yep. All righty. Peter, any final words of wisdom?
No words of wisdom, just words of thanks. Again, so grateful for your willingness to be a partner with our new members as they get their feet wet at Davidson College Presbyterian Church. You'll be great.
It's a lot of fun. Sunday will be fun.
Well, you
All
all have a
right.
good rest of your night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
you.
You too.
Thank you.